It's Holly again. I'm going to try and make this short. I wanted to make a short video about red flags that I saw with my ex. Another thing that I always looked for on YouTube that I couldn't seem to find were very early on red flags. Basically something that, their goal is to hook you in to their little web before the truth comes out, before their true colors start coming out. And people who often fall victim to narcissists, could quickly fall under that charm. So, my question was, how do I avoid ever coming close with any of them, even just as a friend or a boss or something like that, which I've noticed that a lot of people have problems with bosses, and I actually believe that one of my bosses was a narcissist woman, a female, and she actually did get to me quite a few times. She got under my skin, but I'm not in that situation anymore, thank goodness. So, but she was kind of a bully. Kind of used intimidation. I'm not sure if she was fully a narcissist. I haven't really looked at all the different things, but I feel like she had narcissistic tendencies. So anyway, I just wanted to know some things that could prevent me from going through anything like this ever again. And so I feel like maybe giving you some red flags that I had would help your situation. So I'm just going to read a few of these off my laptop. The first one was mirroring. And I think this is something that's been talked about before. When the narcissist feels that he has a victim that's going to fall prey, sort of when he's grooming you, when he's getting you prepped, really turning on the charm. He'll find things about you. Generally, when you talk to anyone and you're first getting to know someone, you tell them your interests, they tell you theirs. And they seem genuinely interested and actually will convey a sense of me too, or I've done that, or, have some kind of expertise on it. So, for instance, when I started dating him, I had just gone through a couple months of just absolutely terrifying anxiety and panic attacks. And that was how our conversation started. We were friends on Facebook already. I don't know if I mentioned this in the other video, but I had known him since kindergarten. We were in kindergarten together. We weren't friends, and we knew each other in middle school, but we weren't friends. But we knew, like I said before, his cousin was my best friend. So we kind of had that in common. And I don't think he knew me, even remembered me from that. I think he just saw that I was somebody that possibly went to the same school he did, and he thought I was pretty or something. It's really crazy the lengths that these people will go to suck you in to find victims. And so I had told him about the anxiety attacks, and he, of course, was like, me too, I go through the same things. And it was funny because I messaged him on Facebook, because at the time we obviously didn't have each other's phone numbers or anything like that, so we weren't texting. But so that was pretty much like the most I guess platonic or friendly way of communicating, which is the only way we communicated was on Facebook. And I had told him about that. Well, it was interesting. He told me, he said, I'll be praying for you, and just da-da-da. Seems a nice guy, great nice guy. And I have to admit that I saw how he was in middle school, kind of got picked on. I got picked on, so I kind of figured he was a nice guy. You tend to think that people like that are going to be nice, but sometimes because of that abuse and bullying that they received earlier in life can traumatize them and cause them to become like this as a defense mechanism. And interestingly enough, we exchanged phone numbers. I didn't hear from him for a few days, and he was supposed to go on a cruise with a friend that was a girl, who I later found out they were together. They were talking about getting married. They were, I think he moved in with her at one point, which she claimed was strictly a financial thing. She claimed that now they were together. We're talking about getting married. I don't believe in cohabitation before marriage, so that was always a problem in our relationship, and I'll get to that later. Maybe in another video, or possibly later in this video. Anyway, back to the panic attack. So I had mentioned that to him, and he said he was praying for me. Didn't hear from him until he was boarding the ship for the cruise, and got a text saying, I just had the worst panic attack of my life. Could you please pray for me? I remember because I was asleep, and it came in, and I literally sat up in bed when I heard the text come in, and read it. It was like I woke up out of a dead sleep. It was very strange. When I told him about this later, he seemed sort of, pleased with that, Me, I saw it as strange. Didn't really analyze it too much, but I just thought it was weird. And normally I don't wake up to my text going off. A phone call, yes. Text, no. Anyway, and he plugged the anxiety thing. He said it was the worst panic attack he'd ever had. And I find that interesting looking back now, that it was the worst. So that was kind of how he hooked me in to make me feel bad for him, which turns out, he used pity a lot. And just different things. Also, our faith. We of course, when we first started talking, we discussed, that we were both Christians. It was a casual thing, like on Facebook, commenting on statuses. And, he'd say, I'm praying for you, and I would say, I'm praying for you, stuff like that. So it started out like that. It built upon it. I found out from the girl before me that he left for me, which I didn't know that he did that. I thought they had broken up long before we, got together. He left her for me. And, she told me that he was strong in his faith. He wasn't, let me tell you this. He wasn't strong in his faith. We went to church together maybe twice, and it wasn't even Sunday church, it was Wednesday church, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think he's obviously not in a good place. He said that there were times in his life where he was in a good place with God. I do believe that. I believe that, if he were to get in right with God and God was to move in his life, that he could possibly become a decent human being. Was he the last year? No. There were times where he would say he was praying more, and as bad as it sounds, I don't believe it, because I feel that when you're filled with the Holy Spirit, I feel like when you are really going good with God and strong in your faith, I feel like it shows to other people. It's just, I won't get into that because I know some of you probably don't have a faith or whatever, but I will say that as Christians, when we're strong in our faith, it shows, and people tend to be curious about it and ask, and that leads into a whole thing of, well, let me share with you my faith. So that was another thing. So the mirroring thing was a big thing that I found interesting. I found that, everything, there was lots of other things. I'm actually into, I want to have a farm one day, and also, just farming and everything that goes with it. And he would tell me, that he was really into that. And so that's enough about the mirroring thing, but you get the idea. This was another big thing for me. He was very charming in the beginning, which, you know, they kind of cover up the red flags. They try to hide the red flags. They're still there. When you look back, you see them more clearly than you did, obviously, then, because you probably didn't want to see them back then, when it was good. But the second time I saw him, he was already asking me, or telling me that he felt that I would be a good wife for him, and that he wanted to marry me. He said, I've never felt this strongly about anyone. I want to marry you. I'm sure he's used this spiel on other girls before. Having known that now, back then I probably would, you know, I probably believed that he felt so strongly about me. And I remember feeling like, I feel great with you. I remember thinking, I feel great with him, but I'm not, like, to that point of, do I know I want to marry him? But I kind of pushed that thought aside, because I thought, well, maybe it comes with time, you know. He just seems so perfect for me, you know. Maybe it'll come with time. Maybe I'll just fall in love a little bit slower. No, I think it was just his way of wooing me. I feel like he's probably not the most skilled narcissist when it comes to grooming and lying and all of that, but, you know, he played a good game. So he was talking about getting married. He was talking about us having children, saying that I would make a fabulous mother. I don't know where he got that, because we'd literally seen each other twice. You know, I like to think I'd be a good mother, but how would you know that after meeting someone, you know, after seeing someone 2 times that you hadn't seen since you were 12? He told me he wanted me to be his daughter's stepmother, and also wanted me to meet her as soon as possible. And I think at the time I kind of questioned that, because I'd never been with someone who had children before, so I wasn't sure, you know, that was new territory. But I told him, you know, I said, well, if you feel, you know, comfortable with me doing that, you know, obviously I'm not opposed to that, but do you think maybe you should get to know me a little better? And he was like, no, I feel like I know you so well, and I feel like you would, you and her would really hit it off. Which we did, by the way. She was a great little kid. I feel bad for her that she's going to have to go through life like this, but her mother has primary custody at this point, so you know, hopefully everything works out with that. I don't want her to never see her father, but you know, being with someone who's like that, it's just a scary thing. So that was a little bit of a red flag there. That same night, I asked to go home. We weren't really hanging out at my house at that point. We weren't hanging out at his house. We were kind of just going, just driving around a little bit. We went to a restaurant and sat and talked, and then we sat in the car and talked for a little bit. And I asked him, you know, I was like, you know, I need to go home. It's getting kind of late. And he didn't get upset, but he would just kind of, he was just very clingy, and I found that to be a huge red flag. And I remember thinking, almost, I don't know if I want to call him back, because this is just so intense, and just so, you know, but I asked him to take me home. You know, I said, I need to go home, and all he wanted to do was just hug me and kiss me and all of that, and I found that to be a huge red flag. Like I said, almost I didn't want to contact him the next day, but I did, of course, and, you know, here we are a year later. That same night, actually, it was early in the morning, we stayed out really late, and his mother called and said that she couldn't find his daughter's shoe. She was trying to get her ready for school because he wasn't there to take her yet, and he was going to hurry and take her. Well, then she called and said she couldn't find her shoe. You know, where was it? And he said, don't worry about it. Just put her back to bed. I'll let her stay out today. because he wanted to spend more time with me, which I thought was awful, just awful. I mean, she needs to have a schedule and routine. Weird. He seemed to get a little whiny when he didn't get things his way initially, but covered it up. Like I said, with the asking him to take me home, and he was just like, no, I want to see you. I want to spend more time with you. I don't want to be away from you. And it was flattering, but at the same time very smothering. And so I thought that was weird. Later on in the relationship, there were some definite red flags. Of course, I didn't need red flags at that point. I mean, I did need red flags to see them, but at that point, I already knew it was a bad thing. I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, but he was on disability for hurting his back, supposedly in a work accident. I later found out that the details of that were hazy from what he told me. But he went to a pain clinic, and at the time when we first started dating, he was on Percocet. They later switched him to OxyContin, and he complained that it wasn't doing what it needed to do, and later told me, I guess in a way of making me believe him, said he felt he was getting addicted to them and wanted to come off of them. And so they switched him back to oxycodone, which is Percocet without Tylenol. Not too sure. He loved to talk about his pills and prescriptions and all the generic names and all that. He loved to talk about all that stuff all the time. He would get drugged out on his pills. He was on pain medicine. He was on benzodiazepines for anxiety, supposedly. He was also on Xanax to bring him up when he would take those things, and he would get sleepy or drugged out, or, the whole, I don't know how many of you are familiar with addicts, but this was my first experience, and he would kind of get this, dazed look in his eye. So he would take the Adderall to pick him back up. He joked that he was on the Elvis Presley diet, and I agreed. But early on, he would not take a lot of the pills because he didn't want me to see him like that. That probably happened about a month or two in, when I finally started seeing him like that. And my dad had to come out late at night and pick me up from his house because he couldn't drive me home. He was that bad. Well, he said he was. I don't know if that was just an excuse to not have to take me. But yeah, he didn't mind being drugged out in front of me. He also claimed not to do illegal drugs, but I found out through ways I'll explain later that he had talked to some girl and had said something about that I was uppity, and that if I found out he smoked weed, I would hit the roof, which is true. I told him from the get-go, I said, my one thing is I don't like drugs. I don't smoke weed. I don't do any drugs, and I ask that you not either. I still don't know if he did. I believe he did it. I believe he was doing it the whole time, smoking. I think that was his favorite thing, was marijuana, according to an ex-girlfriend and his ex-wife. I feel like he was doing it the whole time. Also, his family that he lived close to was on meth at one point, and I guess he also smoked marijuana. And whenever I was around, he would say something like, I don't smoke weed, in front of me, but everybody would get really quiet, and I thought that was kind of weird. That, I thought maybe it was just their way of just keeping quiet and not, not admitting it in front of me. And his cousin, who was on meth, he would talk badly about him to me, but it was funny because they were seemingly very close. And So I don't know what the correlation was there. I don't know if they did drugs together. I know that there were some things that they did together that weren't exactly on the up and up that I did know about later on, and he was open with me about, a little bit open with me. Later on in the relationship, I suspected that he was stealing from gas stations, convenience stores, little, dollar store, I think. I finally caught him. I found a receipt in the bag and was looking at it, and there was a bunch of chapstick and gum that wasn't on the receipt. I asked him about it, and at first he denied it, and then when I showed him that I had the receipt right there, he admitted it, but, of course blamed it on, I can't afford that. And I said, why do you need chapstick? You don't need chapstick. And he said, I can't afford it, and just this big sob story. His whole life was a sob story. Another red flag that was recent, and things got worse and worse. He would pretend like they weren't, but things got worse and worse, and especially in the last 3 or 4 months. A couple of months ago, I was at his house with him, and I texted my mom, asked her a question, and she sent me a response. It was a Bible verse, I believe, and so that kind of got to where we were texting back and forth, and he got upset with me. He said that he couldn't believe that I was taking away from his time, and that I was texting my mom. He didn't like my mom because my mom saw through him. Literally from day one, she knew there was something about him she did not like. And he obviously realized that, and I think tried to shield me from her to keep, of course, I'm very close to my mother, so there was no shielding me from her. He always tried to isolate me. When I told him we were having problems and we needed to work on, and he needed to work on his part and I needed to work on mine, he would complain that we didn't see each other enough. Which is funny because we usually saw each other every single day of the week. If not, it was generally 5 or 6 days a week. He seemed like he wanted to isolate me. I think the more he got me up there, the more he could brainwash me. And that's so true. And I see that now. I see that being away from him for 2 weeks has really, and it's like I said in the other video, it's like I got him out of my system. I've gotten him more and more out of my system. It's like detoxing from something. And he is toxic, so, that makes sense. But I think the more time I spent with him, the more confused I was about it. The more confused I was about, well, I feel I love him, or I feel I care about him, but when I was away from him for longer periods of time, I realized that he was just really toxic and not good for me. And he wanted to isolate me as a result. Also, another thing is that he would complain that I wouldn't spend the night with him or move in with him. I don't believe in those things. That's just my personal belief. I felt he didn't respect that. He would beg me to, and, I would always have to say no, and it was uncomfortable because I would have to say no, and I knew he would get upset with me if I had to say no, but I would say no, and then he kept, he wouldn't, he'd get mad and be like, fine, I'll never ask again, but then a couple weeks down the road, he'd be like, why don't you spend the night, and then we would go through the whole cycle again of me saying no, him getting upset. So those are some of the red flags that I was working on. I've made lists, but those are just the ones that came to my mind tonight, and I'll be posting more if you want. If not, I won't. Leave comments in the comment box, subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and just let me know what you think. If you've had any similar experiences with any of the red flags I mentioned. I also want to note that I was thinking about this a few days ago. How do I prevent myself from doing that? I think boundaries, boundaries. And I think that you need to think about the fact that when you're talking to someone for the first time and you're getting to know them, whether it's over text, in person, on the phone, I think you need to be guarded. I think you need to not release so much information about yourself. I'm a very trusting individual, and I've learned that I need to not be so trusting of new people. Not people in my life, but, new people. And I think the more you reveal about yourself to a narcissist, even if you don't know they're a narcissist yet, they will use that, like I said, with the mirroring. They'll use it later. Like I said, with the panic attacks, and I think that that's how he struck a chord. Because at the point where he started telling me about his panic attacks is when the ball started rolling, when we really started talking more and more. So just be careful what you let people in on, and, if, let them do the talking, let them, just talk about everyday things. Don't talk about necessarily your personal life or what you enjoy so much. Let them in on a little bit at a time, but, just be guarded, have boundaries, try not to be so trusting at first, initially. Just be on guard for that. And, be warm, be friendly to everyone, but if you feel that there's something off, there's something off. Good things don't feel wrong. Good things that are good for you don't feel wrong. Bad things, there's always some kind of feeling, even if you brush it away. Don't brush it away. Listen to it, because there's a reason. And if you do have that feeling of, like, it feels kind of wrong, just back up. Just slow down, back up. Take a little break. Take a little break from texting them or talking to them, and just sort of mull it over in your mind and think, is there any red flag to this? Write it down, walk away, do your own thing, get into something else, come back, look at it, and think, is that weird? What he said to me, was that weird? I felt it was weird. Talk to somebody you trust. I know it seems like a lot to go through, but it's better to walk away before you get to know them that well than a year of putting up with them. And I can tell you from experience, I'm sure, and I was in another narcissistic relationship years and years ago. That was 3.5 years, and that was hard too. But I think you just have to, it's harder as you go along. It's so much harder. And I wish that I had really realized what he was months and months and months ago, because I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it, and I couldn't get away from him, because I had feelings for him, but at the same time, there's like kind of an addictive quality to the victim with the abuser. And I think it's like Stockholm syndrome or some kind of empathetic thing that you have for them. But I wish I'd done it months and months ago, because it would have saved me a lot of heartache. It would have saved me just so much heartache. Just trust me when I tell you, you don't want to get too far with these people. At all. You don't want to get in with these people at all, but the less exposure you have to them, the better. So just let me know what you think, and I will be back later with another video. Thank you.